What's going on, y'all? It's Rev, and welcome back to another Dauntless video. The sword rework has been out for some time, and so we're back at it with another sword video. You all seem to enjoy what's actually the best sword, but there's a lot of comments asking, why didn't you cover more swords? And the real answer is that would take a lot of time and would probably get boring really fast. So instead of taking hours of your time and my time, today's video is going to be putting together a tier list and ranking all of the swords within Dauntless. But before we get started today, I gotta give a quick shout out to today's sponsor, Shing. Shing is an indie beat 'em up game that you can get for Steam, PS4, Xbox, and Switch right now. In Shing, you play as a badass ninja that's trying to recover a legendary artifact called the Star Seed. But it wouldn't be a beat 'em up game if there weren't hordes of demons trying to stop your dreams of becoming the next Hokage. The game features a roster of 4 different characters that you can switch to on the fly in single player, leading to some pretty sick combos, by the way. Or, if that's not really your style, the game has couch co-op and Steam remote play. The game is fully voice acted and has a goofy storyline that doesn't take itself too seriously.
I'm so sorry, Tetsuo. Did you know Bob well?
Never met the guy.
Oh. Then how did you know his name?
He just looks like a Bob to me.
And is also one of the only indie games in a while with a sweet hand-drawn intro animation. They hit a lot of nostalgia strings with this one, so I gotta give it a shout. Shing also has a unique combat control scheme, what they call a twin stick beat 'em up, where you use your right analog stick to perform your combos and left one to move. So up is your launcher, down is your grounded attack, clicking in the stick is your special activation, etc. This is an indie game, y'all, and it's not every day you see a smaller game dev team reach out to creators for sponsorships. So thank you, Mass Creation, for taking a shot with me. If Shing seems interesting to you guys, you can check out the link in the description for more info on PC or pick it up on console right now. Without further ado, let's get right into the tier list. I have the wiki open on the side here in case I need a little cheat sheet. But for the most part, we have the legendary weapons, which I'm just going to go ahead and drop here at the top. The legendary weapons are always going to be your best bet for the particular element that you're utilizing because they have prismatic sockets and they can take on the unique effect of these stronger weapons automatically. So you're always going to have the most bang for the buck on the legendary weapons if you've unlocked them. We have the strong tier, which are just going to be, you know, your cream of the crop swords. No question, these are just weapons that everybody's using, everybody knows about them, and no real secret on how strong they are. We have okay, which are going to be probably a majority of these weapons. The swords that offer something of value, whether it's fun or, you know, mediocre damage, just it can't compare to the strong tier, but they're still strong. They have good cell sockets. You'll see a majority of the swords here. Need help? We have weapons that have unique effects, have bad sockets, and bad passives. This is where they need help. They need help because they need either a rework or just like a slight tweaks to their cell sockets, or whatever it may be. These are just very not sought after weapons. No unique effect is on the list just because I don't feel like it's fair to categorize weapons that just don't have the same stuff that all the other weapons have. Like, a lot of these weapons in Dauntless don't have unique effects, and they haven't for a long time. I don't know what Phoenix Labs is doing, honestly, but some weapons just don't have unique effects. It's not really fair to categorize them because these weapons can be good, and they might even be set into the strong tier, right? If even with their bad cells, bad passive, no unique effect, the unique effect can carry it all the way to strong. So I don't want to categorize them, and so we're going to get right on into it. We're going to start off with Drask. I'm going to put Drask into the strong category, and the reason for that is just because out of all the shock weapons, Drask is probably, for the most part, for most weapon classes, not necessarily restricted to the sword, is going to be your go-to pick. And that's just because it's 30% extra damage, has good cell sockets, and offers etheric attunement, which isn't nearly as bad as energized on the Stormclaw. And we don't even talk about Nezaga. I think Nezaga literally has some of the worst weapons in the game. That being said, Drask is strong within its element type. And I think that it still warrants a spot here in the strong category. But it would probably be like low tier strong. And then next up we have the Nasher Sword, which doesn't have a unique effect. It has a very unique cell layout in utility and defense. And Rage Hunter as a passive, which is great. And so if there's ever like a neutral escalation, that legendary weapon, I would probably 100% say either bond with Shrike or depending on the weapon, maybe Nasher. And yeah, I think it has potential. I think out of all the ones without unique effects, that the one you'd most likely see in the strong category is the Nasher Sword. Let's talk about Shrike. I'm going to put it, as much to my dismay, I'm going to put it in Need Help. And the reason for that is just because it has 3 conditioning on it, which is great for the sword, mind you. 3 conditioning, not bad. Used to be better with repeating elements, but the amount of stamina that the sword consumes isn't as big as a problem as it once was. It has 2 mobility sockets, which is just unnecessary with +3 conditioning already passively on the sword. But the unique effect is what kind of brings it back. And this is kind of one of the sad realities of the Shrike Sword, is that weapon, that unique effect, could rival Boreas if Boreas didn't exist. Like, Boreas is a really strong weapon with a very strong unique effect. Shrike is a very weak weapon with a very strong unique effect. You know what I'm saying? Roll 3 times and you get, I believe it's 100 bonus. Yeah, 100 bonus damage and part damage. So that's a lot of value just for rolling 3 times, something that you always do in Dauntless. And so in the early game, this sword could have been cream of the crop until you unlocked Hellion. But unfortunately, that is just not the reality because Boreas exists. Another neutral weapon without a unique effect and just kind of needs help in general is the Quillshot Bat that offers +3 acidic, and I believe that this one is a technique defense. Let me double check. Technique defense. Yes. So technique defense, +3 acidic, no unique effect. Wounds need help. I think sword is the worst wounding weapon. It's going to take a lot for this weapon to get the love it needs, like it to get up to any sort of tier that is considered okay even. And yeah, it's just very unnotable. I'm not going to spend too much time on it. Wounds are bad, the sword's bad, and yeah, no one can really argue with me than that. We have next up, we have the Skarn Sword. We have a weapon that has great defensive capabilities, and you know, I'm kind of second guessing this strong. I'm going to put it in okay. Doesn't offer a lot of damage, but the unique effect is very, very strong. I'm going to put it in okay. And I feel comfortable putting it there because I think that Koshai is honestly okay too. Terra, out of all the elements, doesn't really have anything that like really wows me in terms of damage output. And honestly, the coolest thing about the Terra weapons is the Skarn unique effect. It offers no damage, but it's got really cool synergy potential with this Terra escalation, with some of the shielding cells that are going on with the, I forget what the Tenacious, I believe is what this new cell is called. That stuff can be very cool and very fun and very strong. But right now, I'm just not wowed by the Terra stuff. And that's just kind of where I'm going to leave those two, Koshai and Skarn. They kind of fall under, like, what I mean for, like, what Skarn lacks in damage, Koshai has in damage. What Koshai lacks in defense, Skarn obviously makes up for it. Has some fun properties, but unfortunately not enough to really warrant being in the strong category. Next up, we have another okay sword that I'm going to drop here. It just needs a little bit of TLC. It has a power socket and a defense cell socket, which is great for escalation. The big drawback is the cost of the unique effect. I think it just needs a reduction in stamina, and it might be a little bit better. This weapon is probably the most likely blaze weapon that can compete with Hellion, but I don't think that that's going to happen anytime soon. Definitely needs like some sort of rework and love to the unique effect before that happens. Next up, we have another okay weapon, and the Scrave weapon honestly is kind of like the Charog weapon. It's almost exactly, it has the same issue where it has a ridiculously strong unique effect, but the sockets and the passive are just, it has nimble, and I believe it's technique mobility, and that's just much to be sought after. But the unique effect is placing 3 mines that deal 300 damage each. That's a lot of damage for a unique effect, but it's on a 30-second cooldown, and that's the really big Achilles heel to this weapon. So I'm gonna drop it into okay. It used to rival Boreas way back when, but ever since Boreas got a nerf, you know, we just dropped that there. You know, everybody knows, you don't even need to contest that. A weapon that I'm, to much dismay, I'm gonna drop in needs help, and this is just because I think that part break builds are kind of like a thing of the past. I think as the player base gets more educated on how Dauntless works, that part break builds and stuff like that just, and especially with escalation, like you have just way more opportunities to get loot, and even more so now with the adventure islands coming out, where you can just farm endlessly. The need for loot in Dauntless is just kind of diminishing, and it's really only good for new players. But if the new player was educated enough to just use the Boreas weapon or use a different type of weapon, they would be okay. It just needs it. The problem isn't the part damage. It's just that people need to be educated more to utilize other weapons in an effective way. Has +3 evasive fury, technique, and mobility cells, which are they're okay. Evasive fury is obviously great. Technique cell can make it so you can get +6 evasive fury, but you can just get more damage out of the Hellion weapon. Now let's just talk about this bad boy, Nezaga weapon. I'm just gonna read it off because I'm so unfamiliar with this weapon that I don't. Nezaga's Razor, +3 barbed, which is just kind of like a utility cell, mobility cell. When behemoth part is broken, heal for 200. Yeah, this is the worst sword in the game. Barbed is nothing. It just doesn't do anything unless you have +6, and that requires 2 cell economy, which is just not worth it. So you have a useless passive, you have a utility cell, which is great, mobility cell, a lot of these don't, like, those 2 cells combined don't offer a lot of total damage together. And then on top of that, you have a scuffed Iceborne that only activates on parts breaking, which is just run Iceborne and you're good. So run Drask, run Stormclaw sword, run anything other than Nezaga sword. It's awful. Don't use it. Valomir. Valomir is an interesting story. We're going to drop it in okay, and then we're going to talk about it. And the reason for that is the new cell coming in, called Tenacious, has potential to boost Valomir back up into the strong category. And it's not that Valomir isn't strong, it's just that the current meta it has no place in the current meta of Dauntless. And so that's why it's okay. Just know that if the meta ever shifts, Valomir could be one of the prized weapons. Offers +3 Aether Hunter, 1 power cell, and 1 utility cell. Once charged, your next attack will deal 550 bonus radiant damage. Charge rate increases when with higher current health. So if you're able to bolster your health in any way, shape, or form in the future, it's possible that it would probably be like one of the strongest weapons in the game. I believe, if memory serves, it's been a long time since I've used Valomir weapons, mind you, but the weapon itself gets hard carried by the unique effect. But I believe the weapon had a charge rate of 12 seconds at full HP at like 1,000 health. Could be wrong. It might be something like 8 seconds. But 500, think of 550 damage every 8 seconds, and then compare that 900 damage every 30 seconds on this Crave, right? Both deal a lot of damage, but Valomir just dumpsters by comparison. And so that being said, it also has Aether Hunter, which is great against Riftstalker. Probably one of the strongest perks that you could have or want versus Riftstalker and any Umbral Behemoth by that point. We also have cells like Tough and Tenacious that will be able to bolster this. There's just so much potential, and I think out of all the swords that exist in Dauntless, Valomir's is definitely the most interesting story. It has a great potential to become one of the strongest weapons, if not the strongest weapon in the game. Moving on to Pangar, another okay weapon. This is another oversight on the unique effect front. Very, very strong unique effect. 90-second cooldown. Fights don't even last that long. You know what I'm saying? You get one brand. 2,000 frost damage after 30 seconds. So once charged, your next attack places a frost brand that deals 2,000 frost damage after 30 seconds. Slayers can destroy the brand prematurely, detonating it for 50% increased damage. So 3,000 damage, if my math is anywhere remotely logical. So 3,000 damage every 90 seconds. Ooh, I would say I love this thing. I just wish that 90 seconds is just way too long. You can't compete with Boreas on a 90-second cooldown. And that's just kind of the sad reality. Offers +3 Knockout King and apparently Technique. I want to say it's Power Defense, but the wiki says Technique Defense, so we're going with that. That being said, yeah, not much more to talk about on the Pangar front, but I do think that the unique effect that they added is very cool. Just needs a little bit more tuning. Hellion, no question, very strong, very solid. This is the old faithful of Dauntless. These weapons are always going to be good unless they just get hard nerfed into the ground. +3 overpower, 2 power sockets. That's just so much damage already. No one can argue that these weapons are bad. Now, another interesting story that I'm gonna put in the strong bin just because Drask is up there. The shock weapons are not as strong as the other, so it should probably be something like this in terms of like the order. I think that these two swords are very similar in power, and the ability to have overdrive up a lot more on the Stormclaw sword adds that extra pizzazz and that extra, like, just kind of, that's why people like this weapon, because it keeps you in overdrive longer, and overdrive is fun. But in terms of like just raw power, the shock weapons just don't offer the same amount as the Hellion, Boreas, Riftstalker, Shroud, all those weapons. But they are interesting, and they still deal more damage than their okay counterparts, in my opinion. Again, Valomir would probably be the only one that's really competing here. So that really does it for the shock weapons, and we'll talk about another weapon that doesn't have a unique effect, which is the Karabac Sword. I think the Karabac Sword is just kind of condemned to a needs help sort of vibe, because it offers Bladestorm, which is awful. It offers technique mobility, which is much to be sought after. Even with a legendary ability, this unique effect needs to be the sauce to warrant +3 Bladestorm into a build. And I just don't see it really happening out when competitors like Koshai exist. Sharpen's just going to be better. That unique effect for damage is going to be good. So the unique effect needs to be stronger than Koshai's unique effect. Just straight up, point blank. So we have my favorite sword, the Reza Katana, coming on in to the okay bin. Unfortunately, I'd love to put it up here, or maybe even up here, but it's going to be in the okay bin for now. And the reason for that is it offers cunning. The unique effect is okay, and the only reason that people see play, or it sees play right now, is because the Valomir weapon isn't as good with low life. And that's just the unfortunate truth. Cunning is never really that good except in niche content. Technique utility, great cell layout, unique effect. Nothing to write home about, just fun, right? Just good old raw fun, chance to double attack. Moving on to the Umbral counterpart. We have the Shroud weapon. Probably the strongest sword, pound for pound, in the game. The thing that holds it back is that the unique effect just isn't... It's not viable in most cases. Like, it's very doable in trials, but for the most part, getting your health down takes longer than it takes in like a heroic plus. You just waste so much time getting that down that you might as well just run Riftstalker and just go ham the moment that you start the fight instead of trying to get your health down to 20%. And then that balancing act of dying and not dying. It's a very high skill weapon, and it's a very just annoying weapon to activate. But pound for pound, very strong. Last but not least, and another strong sword that's going to be up here of the particular elements, we have the Umbral and Shock weapons that are all very strong. Riftstalker is I'm gonna do this. This will be like kind of like my true tier list of how I feel the weapons should be organized. We have Umbral at the top. I think that you need to roll the dice a lot with the Riftstalker sword. It offers Wild Frenzy, which is a great perk for the meta. It has technique utility, which is great for players that are kind of like graduating into running 10 through 50 escalations. It's a great late game weapon. That's kind of all I'm really trying to say. But you don't really want to build it early. You want to be kind of well established, done with the storyline, have some of your armor fully crafted, and you start kind of like going for those meta builds, those meta low life builds. Because if you can't run low life, you're going to be struggling running the Riftstalker sword. The other thing is it can outclass Hellion, and it outclasses Boreas, but you need to have the damage to back up to get all the orbs rolling. And so you have to, like I said, you need to roll the dice with this weapon, but it has the highest potential value if you can get it going. Hellion gonna be like the Old Faithful, and Boreas just is that close to being the best weapon in the game. So that's kind of gonna do it for the tier list, ladies and gentlemen. Hopefully you enjoyed it. Hopefully you learned something. Hopefully this was interesting to you. If you did like this video, please leave a like. If you want to see more Dauntless content like this, I'm about to start kick off a beginner series. Should be a lot of fun. Other than that, thank you guys so very much for watching, and I will see you on the Shattered Isles.